8:34. So let's go ahead and open the meeting. I don't think we'll be voting, but Dale, I guess you're next. Considering we're short, and if Larry doesn't show, then I guess Aaron as well will be able to vote. Both of you. Hi, Aaron.
Probably won't be voting anything tonight, though, will we?
Yeah. So CJ, is anybody out there for the public?
Nobody in the waiting room. Nope.
Okay, so I guess we're just tonight. All we've got is some background or general information concerning the northern part of Lansing in regards to the rural and rural ag. CJ is going to give just an overall presentation. Please don't get bogged down in any of the details. It's just kind of a general status report on some of the things that we discussed as part of the committee, I believe. Correct, CJ?
Yeah, that's right. And thanks, Al. And I thought it might be helpful, since we have two members of the code revision committee here, that they can also fill in with some additional background and kind of color commentary as well. So
Okay.
in essence, we wanted to give an update essentially on where things stand with the zoning update. So as you know, we are operating under a pretty strict directive to stick to the RA and ag districts, site plan review, as well as general provisions. So we're trying to hone in on some of the best ways to craft those sections, and that we won't go into too many of the details tonight. It's, I believe, strongly preferred by the code revision committee as a whole that each zoning district essentially be able to somewhat stand on its own. So for instance, when you go to, say, the new ag zoning district, you'd be able to see at a glance what types of uses would be allowed, some of the more what uses will be allowed by site plan. And then so rather than trying to decipher that table, the Schedule 1 table, which I know is a perennial favorite, but totally. But as a way to essentially kind of have a, almost at a glance, kind of a spread, as it were, to allow folks at a glance to, get a general feel of the zone, know what's allowed and what's not really at a glance, and have some sense of the Vulcan area requirements, and then some that could be specific to uses within those particular zoning districts, which I think is a special request from both this board and as part of the audit. So what I'm hoping to cover today is really an opportunity to really take a high level look and discussion about the intent of these districts. This is really an opportunity to set the tone for these going forward. And we would certainly like to hear any and all comments. This is a wonderful opportunity for wordsmithing. So if there is specific language that you think should be included and crafted within these statements, that's really going to help set the tenor for the way this discussion, or this zoning, I should say, and this discussion, of course, unfolds. So with that, this was included in the packet recently, and this is just to give a sense of what's changing here, which is the addition of a zoning district, the agricultural zoning district. And I mean, this is kind of notable, but it is, I suppose, some semantics here of whether it should be called the agriculture or agricultural zoning district. But in any event, whatever you guys would recommend, we're certainly happy to include that. So these are the two districts here, and I don't know how well you can see them on your screen here, but I'll give a moment to look at it. And in essence, please, however Al wants to kind of run this discussion, I defer to him, but looking to generate, lots of discussion and ideas about the way you think this should unfold.
CJ, I think the primary phrase should be to protect the high value, or Lynn, what's the correct terminology there? The high high value soils,
Prime,
Prime soils.
prime soils, yeah.
Well,
I
that's
think
better than excellent.
Okay, and
what's the next one down, Norm or Lynn? Is it soils of significance or what? There's another one that's below prime, but still pretty high up there.
Statewide importance.
so it's of statewide importance.
So rather than say excellent, use existing terminology.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Okay.
There we
And
go.
that seems to be what is used in the solar game, which of course preserves tons of farmland. So we can go here, go through this, and yeah, get things consistent and see where we go.
Because I would think that we would be looking at both of those, not just prime, but also soils of significance,
Mhm.
statewide significance.
so you would like to take out that excellent and replace it with some different terminology, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I think that's a really good idea.
And that terminology is clearly defined in other documents also.
Good enough for the state of New York solar people.
But is it good enough for you, Lynn?
You know, I really look at this whole thing like I've been here before.
So I'm reading from the Ag and Farmland Protection Plan, and they call it high quality soils.
It'd probably go across the spectrum to make it consistent with the state terms. I think that's within that. Definitely the prime soils, high quality soils. I don't know where that came from, but probably everybody doing their best job.
Did anyone get a chance to look at that American Farmland Trust document I sent around recently? That one they just had that webinar about, how they're trying to come up with those mitigation strategies. I was just curious. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So
no.
No.
I should check
Very
in with you
tiny.
and get some of that stuff printed. Everything I get is fuzzy.
Yeah,
So I put it in text mode and it doesn't even come up. I just have to look at the fuzzy. So maybe we could start the printing process so we could see this.
Yeah, the documents I got sent this last time were all fuzzy too. I don't know why. I've never had that before.
And then when you click text, you can't even look at them. I mean, there's nothing.
yeah.
that's
Maybe-
super weird. Wait, the ones we sent with the planning board agenda?
Mhm.
Really? Fuzzy.
They're not funny website where you go and click and
Laserfish.
thank you.
Okay, but I don't think there was anything on the fish. I mean, the attachments were okay though, right?
Oh, yeah.
This doc was okay that you sent this time.
My attachments were not. So
Really?
I never had that problem before.
Yeah.
It's weird.
All right. Just ghost in the machine. Okay, we'll write this down. Okay, so here we go. Let's go back. I know mine's acting funny here too. Okay, so rather than excellent, we'd like to say prime soils.
I would also look at the word preserve versus conserve.
Because,
Preservation sounds forever. Life isn't forever.
oh God,
So-
you're getting philosophical tonight. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Is that the preference here? Is there any reference to preservation perhaps should be conservation or
Right.
conserve?
Hmm.
Okay. I'll do that one.
And Larry will be happy too.
Really.
I don't know what we mean when we say special quality of life. What does that mean?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a little
I can't
touchy
either.
feeling. And
Yeah,
I
I-
think it implies
say the-
back to the people that have a lot and say that, that is my backyard. And I
Say the
think
quality
that's
of life.
the quality of their life is looking at somebody else's property and saying that's their quality right there.
Bucolic. They want to look out of their house and see a bucolic side that somebody else must maintain.
You got it.
I think to be fair, that people who live out in the rural area move to a rural area and want it to stay somewhat rural. And I hear this from a lot of people in Lansing, that they don't want to see some big factory show up or some big shopping center show up. And I think that's what it's driving at. Maybe there's a better way to phrase it, but I think the general idea is one that I hear from many people in the town.
I think we hear it every time, we try to do something that's different.
Mhm.
And they come here for 5 years and, some much longer. I mean, I know I'm new to the town, but I think nothing ever is in stone, and I understand how they feel that way, but I do think at times I agree with the factory, I agree with shopping center, I agree with you, Joe.
But again, this is just talking about what our philosophy is for this
Mhm.
district. It's not actually saying what's happening in it. And so we're
Mhm.
trying to say, here's what our vision is in general terms. Though I do like using the state terms and, using terms that everybody can kind of agree on and are used in other kinds of documents. I think using those terms and saying, this is what we're trying to have in this district, as opposed to say, R3, which is a totally different philosophy. And I think if each one of these kind of describes a vision of what we want in this area, then when you start trying to determine what's allowed and not allowed in the area, you have a reference point to look back to and say, is allowing this use adding towards this vision or subtracting from it? And I think that's where we're trying to head.
And then there's, how much and the particular impact to the
Mhm.
rest of that. And I concur with that, to go forward, but impact based and density based.
my concern is
Did you say a
that,
little more about that? Oh.
Oh.
I was wondering if Lynn would say a little bit more about impact based and density based, what you.
Well,
embedded?
I think there's so somebody goes ahead and buys a lot or develops a lot, and they stick their well 15 feet from the property line, and then the farm next door has to maintain a 150-foot buffer with manure and spray around that area. They cannot, basically use the normal ag practices. And so I think that impacts farming much more than a cluster development in a little field someplace or a PDA with a subdivision. It's much more impactful, and I don't know how the situation can be perfect, because we have people there, already, but as people build, to be aware that from the town's point, that there be site plan on residential. I just thinking out loud. Maybe a whisker larger lot, but then lots waste more.
Lynn, does the health department regulate where the well is located on a new construction?
I know that it has to be 100 feet or something. There's a set distance from the septic system. Am I correct? We got.
100
Yeah, I
feet.
know that. I didn't know if there was also from any other, side yards or front yard or road, if there was anything else with the health department in regards to that.
I believe it's in terms of the septic fields and the replacement septic fields.
Okay.
Would the town be able to say that it has to be, so many feet from a lot line? I don't know
Well,
if that's superseded by the county or not.
Yeah, I don't know. The
Yeah.
town has, the problem is it's pretty hard to deal with because, how big is your 1 acre lot? And
Well,
150 feet.
yep.
So you put the well in the front yard, and the septic system in the backyard, you can deal with that. And I do not know. Yes, that's a good question.
So Lynn, you alluded to the fact that larger lots are a problem in terms of land use to a certain degree, but Larry brought up that point from the perspective of certainly commercial, that if you mandate that the Dollar General's got to have a 5 acre lot, then it can help you mitigate the impact to distance to neighbors, those kinds of things. And I think to a certain degree, if you really want to encourage or reinforce that bucolic quality of life, rural countryside look, that I think that we ought to be looking at upsizing lots. And what size that should be, I don't know, but I think that 1 acre, if you want to live up in the rural area, then you should have a larger lot. Not 1 acre, but maybe 2. I don't know, but and we should definitely check to see what the regs are on wells, because that would, like you said, is something that definitely impacts the agricultural use. And moving forward, we would want to try to limit that.
I mean,
Would-
Maine has 3 acre lots, but there are a lot of rocks. They're not farming up there, and a lot of bushes. I mean, so it's not, not quite the same.
Are these some stipulations that could be made more explicit in site plan review?
That's what I thought.
Sure. I did hear a reference to site plan review for all uses in some areas. I mean, even single family residential, I'm hearing.
I
Because
think
right now,
within the ag zoning district.
right now, single family doesn't get site plan at all.
That's correct.
Right, but in the RA, it as Lynn demonstrated, can very easily impinge on the ability to productively use your agricultural land.
Well, I guess the question is, what's the best way to help preserve the agricultural uses when houses are getting built in the area? Is it better to set out some specific parameters saying, a well has to be, 25 or 50 feet from a lot line? Or do you want to have everything in the ag district go through site plan so that the planning board can sit there and say, hey, if you put your well there, that's a real problem. How about if you put it over here and put your septic tank over there and things like that?
I don't know how difficult it would be to do that in relation to working with the health department. I don't think that's anything we can really decide, if you want to spend all night, but I think that's something that might be an idea to crystallize into something. And the other thing is to approve a cluster model that allows, reduced lot size and keeps and preserves farmland, but deals with these questions of where the well is and where the septic system is. I know George Franz has done a lot of work with ag-friendly zoning, and maybe he can come up with some ideas.
Can you split it and say, if the proposed development, whether it's residential or commercial, is within so many feet of a tillable piece of land, then it goes to site plan. If there's enough distance from the working fields, then it doesn't go to the site plan. Is that something we could look at and say, if it falls into X, it goes to site plan, but if it falls under Y guidelines, then it doesn't go to site plan? Is that, CJ, is that a possibility?
It sounds like you might be suggesting some kind of overlay district related to soils.
I think
I
it's
may
what
say.
exists if you have existing fields, it's not an overlay district. I think it's
Right.
dealing with what, there's better minds here than me, but you know, I don't think it's an impossible thing to find out if somebody's already done it and what were the pitfalls. Is it a huge burden to do site plan on a residential lot?
Yeah, I
But
mean, in order for me to get a special use permit, you know, I had to maintain all my ag uses over, you know, 100 feet or 300 feet or whatever it was from neighboring non-agricultural land. So it would seem like pretty easy to say if your non-agricultural or your residential development is within 100 feet of, you know, tillable ag soils, that you have to have site plan review.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. What Dean was just saying is that if it falls within a proximity that we all feel is a fair distance, then even residential property has to go to site plan. And as Joe said, then the planning board can say, okay, where are you going to put your well? Where are you going to put your septic? And okay, you don't have enough land or buffer in there between where the well is and the tillable field. So that might be a better route to go. I don't know.
I think what CJ is suggesting is if you simply sell tillable land, then every time someone comes forward with a project, the staff has to sit down and decide, is there tillable land next to them or not? Whereas if we just go through the area and mark up and say, this is all the tillable land, make that an overlay district and say anything within this district has to go through site plan, it makes the process much easier for staff when a project comes forward. They simply know, is this going to go through site plan or not? They don't have to go through some subjective thing and say, is that being farmed? What was farmed last year but not this year? Does that count? And, you know, all kinds of variables that might be difficult to determine on a case-by-case process, but we can just do it once. And then, yeah, obviously we can always adjust it as time goes by if we see changes in land use. But I think that process would make it much more easy when a project comes forward to know which path it's supposed to go on.
I think I think it might be difficult in some cases to tell people where they can put their well and where they can put their septic, because sometimes you can only put a well in a certain place. I mean, that's where the water is. And what if somebody buys land expecting to build and we're telling them, no, you can't put your well there, but now you don't have enough land or enough space to have your house, your well, and your septic. I think that's not a great idea either.
Well, we already do tell them you can't put your septic there. It's, you know, for some reason, I've seen it in many site plans in which they've said, you need to move the septic over further. You need to move your well this way. There's already an element of that happening. It's just not happening on single family residential.
Exactly.
I mean, it does make a difference if you have Mr. Brown come with his witching stick and he says that's where the water is, and he's always right. I mean, so that makes it kind of tough if it's in the middle of your lot, or you have to find you know, find a bigger lot to contend with.
Well, if all this stuff is written out in the zoning law, when someone comes to buy a lot in Lansing, they will understand that in order to build a house, they're going to have to go through this process, and there may be adjustments. And so they will look at the land differently and say, am I going to be able to meet the parameters that are likely to be asked of me by a planning board? Which, you know, maybe thoughts that's not given to property when it's being bought right now, and we would like it to be.
I think
Lynn,
yeah.
Lynn, back to your statement about the proximity of manure or pesticides, herbicides. What does that fall under again? Who's regulating that?
That's a well, it's a DEC addition to the CAFO plan. I don't want to get an alphabet soup, but that's how it exists, and it's part of the application. I would think it would fall under DEC. But I'm
Yeah,
sure it's in CAFO plans because the manure situation comes in the CAFO plan, so. But it's all in the same.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to get, CJ, if you get a chance to find that and let us know how that is worded. So, that's gonna have merit here.
What CAFO piece are we talking about here?
What the
The-
CAFO rules are for
Oh, okay.
application of manures or pesticides.
Okay, so we would want to call out confined animal feeding operation as a type of agricultural use. We'd want to specify that.
No, I'm just saying.
This is
what is-
application.
Putting it on the field.
With
No,
the
I'm-
application.
I was curious on how that's worded and what the distance is and who regulates that and enforces it. In other words, the
The
legalese
DEC.
behind that.
would
Yeah,
say
that's
the
DC. Yep, and that's through the nutrient management, and yeah, there's a lot of yeah, that's all regulated at the state level. But yes, I think Lynn is referring to that new Speedy's general permit, perhaps.
No,
That's
no,
just
it's
coming
nothing
through?
to do. It's been around for 15 years. If your spray
So-
operator, you give him your fields, they're measured out so they know where they go, and you get a letter that says, please certify that there's no well within 100 or 150 feet. It's not anything special. It's been for a long time.
Okay, yeah, I just know that they're getting ready to update the Speedy's general permit for CAFOs. I think that's in draft right now, so maybe it's worth looking at that too and seeing how some of that language can be brought in, which does kind of nicely dovetail with. So I'm hearing, just back up a moment, I am hearing that there could be better information given to people when they come to get a building permit to construct a single family home within the ag zoning district, at least for existing lots. It sounds like I'm hearing that maybe folks just maybe aren't prepared for some of the limitations associated with that, and that we should be doing extra outreach in relation to Chapter 133 to make sure people are aware of right to farm and some of the potential impacts that they're likely to be facing. And at least if I'm hearing that correct.
Right.
This is not an RA regulation. This is period.
Mhm.
Whether it's in Cuga Heights or the
Right.
village.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
with right to farm. Okay. Yep. And I think that's something that we could stand to do a better job with educating people for sure.
Mhm.
And I'm also hearing that one of the first steps that we need to direct people also is coordination with the health department. And maybe that's something we need to do maybe on a higher level before it's getting there. Is better coordination with Tompkins County Health Department, their environmental health division, to see if maybe there's some maybe kind of pre-planning we could do associated with well and septic in certain areas. It's entirely possible, and that could be a good opportunity for us to put our heads together relative to that. So, and I'm also hearing a potential for overlay district related to the soils. Now, I did bring up the soils map. It's obviously very variated. So we'll need to think through that a little bit. And it is a little bit easier to use overlays now, but that one's pretty complex by the looks of it between the prime and soils of statewide importance.
I think we could look rather seriously at those things and then look at, as you say, some kind of agreement with the health department that would help people be compliant.
Yeah.
We're not going to decide that tonight, and maybe somebody else has already done this and found out the problems with it.
Totally, yeah, and their jurisdiction is separate from ours, but it obviously has a strong relationship as well, and I think that's where you're getting at, is perhaps there is a sweet spot to land on in terms of new lot size. And I'm also hearing some information about density averaging, and I didn't really see anything about that in the ag plan. The town's ag plan doesn't go into too many specifics about what you want the maximum build out to look like in this zoning district. So that's something to chew on too. But the other thing I was going to mention was, I can't remember who it was, but at some point somebody did mention to me meat processors and dairy processors.
Mhm.
And I had had some kind of brief conversations about this, as I believe the Department of Assessment, County Department of Assessment, considers those to be commercial uses. So dairy, commercial dairy processor and like a meat processor would be considered commercial. But from a zoning perspective, those are really under 305. The unreasonably restrictive standard the Ag and Markets uses, my understanding is that those are still very much agricultural uses.
And
So
promoted.
Mhm.
okay. So I guess that's kind of where I'm leading to also, is the, what are the market dimensions here, maybe that I'm not aware of, or maybe that we're not as hip to, that some of you are probably certainly clued into, that we need to be aware of. Are there folks looking to do those kinds of projects in the town?
I know the state has a real foot on the pedal to find food and meat processing, vegetable and meat processing, it's all food, cheese making, et cetera, and so forth. That is one of their priorities. So the thing is, supporting it, right now, there's a real shortage. So people are, trying to schedule slaughter 6 months out. It's a real mess. And so it takes somebody with the wherewithal. There's probably going to be enough money for grants, but they're going to have to have the business sense and the skills to, make it all happen. And I do not have an answer for the density. So I think we wouldn't need one in Lansing and one in Groton, I don't think. But the idea of people taking that idea and running with it, and we do have water in our ag zone, city water, which would promote that kind of thing. It's definitely commercial, and it's also ag. I mean, so yes, is the answer. I can't say there wouldn't be a huge number around.
Lynn, am I hearing, I think one of the intentions that we're considering for the mapping portion of this is that the RA zoning district would follow the existing infrastructure, so planned or built water lines and, major roads is what we're thinking. Am I hearing you say that were these uses, assuming these uses are allowed already on their face, how could we best manage them? And I think maybe you're saying those would be best limited to the RA zoning district, but they would need to have also plenty of space around them, like a pretty significant minimum lot size to be able to accommodate them, because they also need significant water. And of course, they would need to be buffered from residential properties. Is that a good understanding, do you think? Is that?
Well, it's the amount of, I'm trying to get my arms around all this from when I delivered hogs in 1978. Not so many gray cells, but I don't think, Cudlin's in Newfield, is probably no more than a couple acres. I don't know if they were on a well or not. Plenty of them can work on a well. As I understood where the water line was, that would be a transitional zone in that area. But definitely if people had a water source, I mean, these farms use huge amounts of water. And so it's not that it would be impossible to, or even a stretch to be able to handle that. So maybe I misspoke on the water line idea, but.
No, I understand. Back to that, we were talking about the RA and it came up at the meeting. Educate me. I thought the planning board at one time wanted to see the RA in the hamlet of North Lansing and the hamlet of Lansingville. Can anybody expand on that? Was that correct or not?
Hamlet thoughts have been around for quite a while. And I think as far as uses, I think the hamlets have a place. If that's what you're driving at.
You're
Right.
thinking hamlets would be more RA, more housing, more, housing clustered together and less, less active agriculture.
So in the past, I believe the planning board was recommending that the RA be along the water line and in North Lansing and in Lansingville. Is it, and I don't remember anywhere. Was there any other location?
No,
Anybody
whether it's transition road along 34B and 34, just, we're getting terms mixed up here. So the old RA, right? Reckless abandon would
Yeah,
be in the transition zone on the major corridors. And then the ag zone, not to confuse it with the New York State Ag District, would be in the areas outside of that with the, the taking in mind the prime soils and soils of statewide importance.
Right. Also, I forgot there was a Peruville Road as well. I think was part of the planning board's recommendation.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I would think in the ag zone, one of the things that we've recently discussed would be that any subdivision or division of land for in the ag zone for single family residential use or cluster housing or whatever needs to take into account and have a drainage plan, because we're seeing, when you chop off the field 150 feet or 200 feet from the road, and now all of a sudden that field that used to drain to the roadside ditch no longer does, or it does, but it's much more consolidated at one point, and there's potential flooding issues in through people's backyards because they built along the highway, and then now all of a sudden it's a problem that the field still drains the way it always did to the street. Now it drains to their yard.
Yeah, that's what happened in Autumn Ridge, right?
Yeah, I think Autumn Ridge had that problem. We heard about that with Osmitsa, that people up in that area were complaining about the drainage off the hillside through the fields.
But
Well,
how would you, what would the oversight be, Dean, on that? I don't
That
understand.
would be anytime somebody wants to subdivide anything, there would have to be drainage plan considerations in there.
I think the goal of
That would look at lands not on the subject site, but the neighboring site. Is that what you're saying?
Right. I think they would have to have a plan for not just the one lot that they want to pull off, but future lots. And, how is this thing draining, and how are you going to, mitigate the drainage effect on the proposed lots that you want to subdivide off.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Osmic is totally different if that's what you were talking about. And I do get what you're talking about, but I did believe the stormwater is a plan that is required to be handled on site in the current model. And the fact that fields have flooded for millions of years, if in fact whatever stormwater practices that are put in with a lot, residential or commercial, can easily be overwhelmed by what's been happening since probably the glacier, and so that's a tough one when people, am I making myself clear?
Yep.
You have your impermeables and you handle them on site. And when you've got that kind of a rain, it rears its head and says, I'm going where I want to go. And so I think that's a bit of a taking from people, but it's a tough nut. It really is to deal with. And I guess you see then, mitigation and you're just the same as in town where you have your different practices with limited, restricted, controlled output to a road ditch or other practices.
I think my point, Lynn, would be if you look at where the Dollar General is up on 34B, imagine that had every lot along the frontage was developed as a house, right? Or somebody wanted to take that field and divide off all the lots along the road and not leave any drainway. Right now, they do have an actual drainway, right, that they left through there between one of the residential neighbors, I think, to the north and the Dollar General. So my point would be they should have to leave some kind of drainway for things to be able to drain out to the ditch downhill. And you might even say, part of that development would be that you have to provide some kind of swale uphill of the lots that you want to break off.
So the last lot, as I saw the Dollar General show, to the north, that just hadn't been pedaled yet. But you would say that most of the drainage on that field came down through that lot just to the south of that lady's house. So that kind of thing would have to be mapped out ahead of time. And I think we got the technology to say where drainage is these days. I mean, that should be able to be picked up pretty quickly.
I mean, you would think that they, just like you would have to have a strip for future access for either utilities or driving, you would think that they'd have to leave some kind of a drainway where, it's wide enough that it could be maintained.
Correct.
See, CJ, are we getting into too much detail?
I think.
No,
I like Dean.
Because, we're trying to think about this as, of all the different ways we can approach a variety of situations, which I think overall what I'm hearing is limit the residential impact on agricultural lands, if I may be so bold as to say. But I'm definitely hearing that you're looking to lower the threshold of disturbance that would require maybe even like a mini SWIP, like a basic, maybe baby SWIP kind of idea. I think I'm also hearing that there should be a significant or a very low percentage of building coverage maximum on a lot. I think that's what I'm hearing. And then also a very small percentage of impervious coverage on a lot, and that those two things should have some kind of relationship as well in new lots here, or even existing when you're going to develop.
I'm sorry, that differs between residential and any agricultural or / commercial. I mean, the buffer, I think, has got to be broader on any related commercial in the RA zone as opposed to the residential. That percentage of open area on a commercial lot.
And you're talking RA?
Yeah, in the RA.
Your water problem is independent of all these uses.
Yeah. It's everywhere.
It doesn't matter which zone it is, you got water problems. So.
Yeah, your typical commercial buildings are, typically, whether it's a garage or a food processing factory or whatnot, typically are going to be slab on grade, no basement. I can tell you in every residential house that has a crawl space, frost footing, a basement, that certainly citing that building so that the bottom of the footer drain, the drains can go out to daylight. Some places critical if you want to have a dry basement, but at the same time, there are excavators who are really good. There's excavators who are okay, and there's excavators who are terrible. And we see surface moisture problems, grading problems constantly. And we live in a town that's got a lot of hills in it, and
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, having I guess CJ was talking about having a little bit more discussion, a little more back and forth and education to potential lot purchasers who want to build in the RA district. And that's just another thing that could be integrated. Maybe it's less of a have to provide, a surface swale or something, and more of a telling the homeowner that, you're going to be responsible if your basement floods when you build that house there. The farmer behind you is not going to be responsible.
Well, that certainly would be in the book, along with a scratch and sniff page of what it's like to live in an ag zone. So, yeah.
Little jar, open up.
I think in this overall rationale for the ag district, when it says one of the things that it attempts to do is reduce land use conflicts, I think that gives a nice platform to then, as we've been doing, or some of us who are smart enough to do it have been doing it, identifying potential conflicts, wells, and application of fertilizers, for example. So, I mean, maybe one of the steps to go on further, not tonight, is to figure out ways to reduce land use conflicts in this area. And
yeah, it's, you drive up Lansingville Road and your brand new Volvo, and chances are if it was blue, it's going to be like two-tone. It's going to be brown on the bottom part now this time of year.
And it's a little my basement garage floor.
Well, some of that who's running the farm too.
Yeah.
You see a lot of snowplows on trucks, and you see farms with big highway brushes on the front of their tractors, and you see others that just freaking drive.
Well, they're using grandpa's manure spreader. But I think it's really good in that, and I like this overall rationale to say there are going to be land use conflicts that can be reduced if we're careful about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know where it's appropriate to put in, what some of those things are, but certainly,
yeah,
dust, noise, lighting at night, smell, obviously.
It's right in the contract they sign when they buy their lot or buy their house. That's what the ag data statement is in place, and it's been for 1,000,000 years. The reality is the realtors, they kind of put that in the corner. And as I understand it, by the time it gets to the assessment office, many things aren't checked on that form. And I'm not laying any blame down, but when people have had, come in and make complaints, and they say, I never saw that. And the the full circle had not been done on the document that went to either the courthouse or the assessment. I guess it would go to the courthouse. That in fact they were informed of the ag district and what can happen.
Yeah,
I assure you that most people don't read most of the closing documents when they buy a house. It's wrong. They should, but most people simply don't read that stuff. I don't care what you make them sign. They're told sign here, 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 and here, and they sign it and they don't read it.
But the worst part is it's not checked for the clerk. The final bit's not done, and to make it legal that they in fact did see it. You're correct.
Yeah, Lynn, from the assessment end of it, the 5217 that's recorded in the clerk's office, there are many times, you're correct, that those boxes are blank. And we tried to get the county clerk to proof those and not accept them if they're blanks. And the county clerk said that's not her job, and they have to accept it no matter how it's filled out. So the assessment office, we ran into a wall in that regards, is that it's recorded in the clerk's office and then a copy is forwarded over the assessment office. There's not much we can do about it. I mean, and Joe's correct. People are taught to, requested to just sign this, this, and this, and half the time they don't know what they're signing or what it involves, and it's an unfortunate. How you educate them, I don't know.
Well, if their closing is delayed because the clerk doesn't accept it.
But the clerk won't take that responsibility on.
Well, that's something that maybe the clerk should learn about.
No, she won't take that responsibility. She doesn't want her, the clerks, the people who accept those forms. That's not their job to proof them. Is what came back to us.
So if we're doing site plan on these potential homes in the ag district, this could be part of that process, is to go through that form.
And
it's not necessarily going through the form. Form just says that they're located in an agricultural district and farmers have the right to farm, which involves noise, odors. I don't know what else is in there.
Dust,
whatever.
light,
hours of operation.
Yeah.
So I think there's maybe a way to. I don't see how you do it at the town level, because I don't see, as part of the subdivision, I guess the town could have one more law. But I don't think we need to beat that up tonight. I think that's an idea.
Right. No, you're right. We're kind of getting into too much detail again. I think we need to back up and CJ to.
It's I think this is helpful though, because, one of the things that we've been working on in the office is kind of an internal and kind of packet that we've been developing for folks who are applying for building permits and what kind of inspections that they'll need. So we're trying to really formalize that process and help people understand that we may need more than, say, 24 hours to look at their building plans.
They're bringing in Friday at 3.
I want my permit now.
I know. It's very challenging, it's challenging for all of us. So, we're trying to kind of, in a nice way, without, having, 50 different signs hanging all over the transaction window, is kind of the sense of, please plan ahead, remember this general information. Here's where you can find information. This is what we're expecting from you from plans. And I think one of the pieces that we can include is we can bring that right to farm language right into that instruction set, so that people are pretty aware right off the bat. And I believe that it is included in our existing building permit, which we're in the process of revamping. But this is really helpful, because the reality is, we're kind of in this middle piece of, there's planning, and then there's zoning, and then there's, permitting, and like the actual built environment, right? And what that ends up being like. So I think this conversation is really helpful for me to understand, because if we can catch somebody at our window, even if it's the last stop, and we can then from there, help people have maybe a more positive relationship, and interactions with farming, and accept those things as, a way of life, and something that we, uphold as our highest value. I think that's a really great opportunity and a really good thing for me to hear. And I'm adding that kind of piece for myself to make some notes here. So that's kind of where I was going, is, I wanted to see more about what you thought about, really the difference at heart between the two districts, this pure ag zoning district versus what we see moving into this RA zoning district that has, a bit more residential, a bit more commercial, and is somewhat designated for development because it is on infrastructure, such as plans or existing water and other types of services. So
your point is well taken, but the transfer of that home that you've permitted and made clear of the day is with the first owner or the first developer, and the person on the spec who then sells it to the person it's the transfer of that lot to the next person, which is a higher power in terms of, I guess, the county being made aware again and again. It's not a new thing, as Al points out, but yes.
One other thing that came up in the meeting this week was the RA zone. Right now, it looked like John had most of it on the downhill side of Ridge Road. What's the thought process from the board members? Should it be on the uphill and downhill side? Lynn, go ahead.
We're going back to the old RA, right?
Well, no, what the proposed, we're proposing having an ag zone and a rural agricultural zone.
Right,
And
the
that
transition.
agricultural zone is going to allow more denser, possibly development and some related commercial development. So should that be solely on the downhill side of Ridge Road or just bordering Ridge Road? In other words, should some of the parcels on the uphill side be included?
All the, I don't know, there was a map here that CJ put up from 2014. My opinion on both sides of the road for 300 feet or follow it by parcel should be a transition all the way along the water line. And, it's affects me that, I'm scenic where I am up there on the county line and are all RA, but no, my opinion is that it's already there. It's already built up one side, downside. As far as whether you want to go all the way to the L1 on the downhill side and just follow it by parcel on the east side. I think it should follow by parcel personally, but we were very happy with having 300 or 350 feet in the day before everybody got back into parcel idea. So I can't really explain that, but I do think the parcel makes more sense because we had a special rule in there. I think it's still in there of, well, how much of the parcel can you split? But
how does that relate to the map of the soils?
I think it's immaterial when there's that much infrastructure.
Ah,
I guess, is it, CJ, can you go back to that
Yeah.
map again?
Which one? The water?
Blue? The one that had the parcels in blue.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it
so
looks
this
like-
is the water. Yep, these are the water districts. Yep, that's CWD. Mhm.
So that should
So-
follow all the way up.
Mhm.
So the question is, should those parcels in blue on the uphill side be included in the RA zone? I guess that's my question.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, any other board members?
In fact, I would go all the way to the county line, but it's kind of strange that is RA to the west of Lake Ridge, other than the fact that it's, industrial probably or whatever, but.
Aaron or Dale, what do you think? What's your opinion on that?
I think on the right side of the road going up or the east side, there should be more RA. I'd agree with that. Because it pretty much is now.
Yeah,
Here.
so make it a blanket 300 feet.
Or parcel is the new, and it gets, Dean was in the middle of the 300-foot show.
Okay. The split zoning.
Anyone else on the opinion on that uphill side? Sandy?
Okay.
I agree with Lynn.
Yeah, me too.
By parcel.
So what, do you
Oh,
all think
by
it's
parcel.
appropriate for it to follow the water district boundaries?
And,
RA?
and extend it up to the county line. I think Lynn was saying as well.
Yeah. And then you're
These
on,
are-
you're on Lake Ridge here, your
Mhm.
34B goes straight.
Yep.
Yeah,
These happen to be parcels that are in the consolidated water district here shown in blue. And I'm not sure what this pink is. I think that's a water district extension, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe a proposed extension.
Yeah, it's a newer water district, I believe.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's the one that's not coming along there. Okay, but this was the proposed zoning, and one idea is to have them line up nicely, would be to have the parcels that are in the water district also be matched the RA, essentially is saying, this is where we have service, this is where people are entitled to service. Doesn't require any extension of special services, where we need ag and markets, permission to extend, it's already done, it's already there. So, and they're pretty close, the two already,
Not
they're.
a- it's not an act, and I don't know for extending, as far as I know, just that person that's in that ag use does not have to pay the fee for as I remember, it's a cost thing, that they're not paying the water tax if they don't opt into the
Connection.
Okay.
water district. They have an option to
Got it.
not be in it.
Do we have a water district up 34A, Auburn Road?
No. We can't, there is a proposal for this area here. In I think the equivalent would be this, this area, which is currently R3. This area is proposed to have water service. Doesn't seem to be penciling though right now, so. But no, there's no water service heading into North Lansing. No.
Yeah.
Should we be thinking about taking groups of the residential along Auburn Road and making those RA?
Okay, such as these kind of the hamlet type of areas.
Well, look at where Munson Road is there, out at 34, and you've got, how many, 5, 6 lots for single family homes, and kind of the same thing there just north of East Lansing Road. It looks like you've got a bunch in Cyril's Road. You got a whole bunch of residential homes along the frontage. Where do we want people to develop and do development for RA? We don't want it back in the ag. We want it to be out at the highway. Especially if it's agritourism, right? We would want that out at the highway. So I would think that those parcels that are adjacent to the highway, at least the first, like Lynn said, 300 feet back or something, should be potentially included in the RA along that highway.
Well, part of it, if you go south of Cyril's Road, you've got a house that has a catering business in it. Then you've got the horse farm. Then you've got a mini storage. You've got a landscape business. So you do have some mixed use there. So that RA maybe should go at least to Cyril's Road, or south of Cyril's Road, along 34 is what I'm thinking. It already is in existence now.
And as you go up 34, you've got Meadow Ridge, you've got the boat guy. Yeah, whether you do a parcel or you do a 300 foot, whatever, it speaks to have something done.
And then how about the state institutions there? That obviously shouldn't be ag zone. Should that be industrial or should be considered RA or?
A state institution or a school can do any damn thing they want. They just come in and plunk. So
Right.
we try to lead them in one direction. I don't know how CJ knows the law and everything, but you can't account for them, and those fields may go back. I guess the one's going to stay for the town as a park and dog park and the walking trail. Whether they get ideas to buy the rest of it, that's still town property. They can do whatever they want.
Here. I would say this about the RA is that I think the overall intent is still to have farming and farm related business be the predominant and desired land use activities, with others being supported. So we can talk about the scope of how you see that going forward, but I want to be very clear that in the pure ag zoning districts, there is no shortage of agricultural uses, and we'll go into that a little more in the future of all the different how we've sliced and diced all the different agricultural uses, really to give people ideas and promote those uses as highest and best in that zoning district, and ag supportive uses as well. So
I mean,
yeah,
the R3 I see as a area where we have a lot of site plan, and if you don't know it's there, it's probably okay to have it. But it's not getting into the ag zone. Obviously, no Walmarts, no hospitals, there's limits, but professional offices, daycare. I haven't read the thing in a while. I can't remember the first page I read anyway.
CJ, make a note that on that southwest corner of Collins or northeast corner of Collins and Asbury, which is my lot, that's 10 acres, and it has a little yellow in the corner.
mm-hmm.
That yellow needs to be removed as
No
part of
wonder
this
where
process.
Yeah, I think I get where they're going with it to try to square off that corner, but I see what you're saying here. Kind of an odd extension, especially because it doesn't even face on the other side. But any kind of last thoughts on the intents and kind of where things are heading, and anything you feel like you really want to tell us as we start to hone into these uses? And
Do you have some good examples of restrictions or whatnot from other municipalities that we can
Sure.
glom onto and review?
Oh yeah. And I think that's what's, the zoning itself, isn't too hard. That's the fun kind of technical part. It's more making sure that the tenor of the regulations accurately reflect what the town actually wants. That's kind of the tricky piece. Now I'm hearing, and I'm somewhat surprised to hear this, but I am hearing from you that within the kind of pure ag zoning district, that new residential development should undergo site plan review with the planning board. I just want to be clear on what that really means. We're talking about 65+% of the town's land area. If somebody wants to build a new residential structure, they will be in front of this board. That's a significant time commitment.
What's the additional cost for that, CJ?
It depends on the construction value. So we ask people to pay site plan review fees based on the estimated project cost. So let's see here. Let me bring up the fee schedule just so you're aware. Just a moment. Okay.
And I mean, it's not just that, you're talking copies of maps and surveys and drawings, multiple copies. So there is an additional cost to a potential homeowner, builder. You know, we don't want to, you know, prohibit construction because of large additional fees, I don't think.
I mean, is it that hard to make sure that the well is so many feet from a tilled field and the septic
No,
system is the
but I'm
proper
just
distance
saying,
from the well?
I don't want to see an additional burden on a residential owner. I mean, everything's expensive as it is, whether it's materials, labor, taxes. You know, I hate to see more expenses put onto a property owner. That's all.
Well, I think that that's exactly what the current residents are asking for.
What, more expenses?
No,
For other
what I think what
people.
they're asking for is ways to potentially slow down or inhibit the process of other people building near them. They
Can I
like the
go back?
bucolic countryside that's around them, and they really don't want somebody to build next door.
What kind of a
That's-
process does, say, a large farmer go through when he or she wants to break off a piece for a building lot for one house? Is there any kind of monitoring at that point to examine what's going on, to determine how much of a site plan might be needed?
That's a good question. So when somebody comes in typically for an exempt subdivision, so that's generally
Yeah.
speaking a large parcel where somebody is simply dividing a small piece for the first time. That doesn't come to this board because
Right.
the language in the current subdivision regulations say, you know, if you're doing, if it's not under, I want to say 2 acres, and it's the first subdivision of this parent parcel, you know, it's pretty straightforward. They have enough land with 2 acres, you know, there's no issue really meeting health department requirements. And that's been kind of a given. And they come in and they have a subdivision plat, they file it. We sign off on it as an exempt subdivision. They file it with county assessment, who, you know, basically double checks with us. They're looking for that signature to say, yes, the town has authorized this. And then it goes to the county clerk, and then they can, sell that parcel or give it to their children or grandchildren or, you know, whatever you name it. They can do whatever with it they wish, of course, you know, within reason.
So there's no review in that part. So it's the future person
Right.
building on that lot that's going to bear the brunt of review.
Well, it depends on what you want to do. Yes, you could say that, the subdivisions themselves could be exempt. So if somebody for some reason did want to sell a lot to, somebody for whatever reason, they wanted to just sell a parcel, and then, that person came in at a later date, the structure itself could undergo site plan review. Absolutely. There's no reason why you couldn't continue to allow the subdivision itself, as long as it met that minimum standard that we're talking about. And let me just make sure I'm not speaking out of turn here with the status of exempt subdivision. I want to make sure you have the right definition. Okay, so the division of any parcel into 2 or fewer lots. So they can't be less than 1 acre, can't be non-conforming. It has to have 150 feet of frontage on a public highway. No new infrastructure is proposed for it, and it can't have been part of any prior subdivision. So as long as you meet that requirement, you can come in and have that approved in office. They're rare, though. I would say we do probably, I don't know, at this point, maybe 3 or 4 a year from what I'm seeing.
So,
But 3 or 4 a year times a bunch of years is a lot of subdivisions.
so to ask the question, if we did want to deal with this conflict situation with wells, that is, as is where is, and every lot is unique, but can the code person work with the health department to say, how much work is that part? I guess rather than doing site plan through the planning board. Some are going to say, yes, you got to go to the planning board. Some are going to be maybe easier.
Ah.
Am I
So
hearing
at the
maybe?
discretion of the planning office?
Yeah, you want
Well-
equal application, but it could be that, site plan review for that type of circumstance would be more abbreviated. It might only have certain things that you're really looking at.
Hmm.
You're talking like some kind of maybe staff level site plan review. I mean, it kind of, Scott is doing that, of course, as part of building permitting. He's the first coordination is always or Bolton and Tompkins County Health Department. They are our first contacts in every and all building situation. And Scott is pretty serious about making sure that those folks have approved the layout of that infrastructure before anything proceeds. So now that said, I don't know that it really fully addresses what Lynn is saying about then that kind of secondary impact to farmers. I think that's really at the heart of the conversation. And maybe this is something I reach out to Scott Freiberger and have a conversation about what could we do better? What could we do more to enhance agricultural use, as well as to being mindful that folks are going to want to build residential properties. I think this is a great discussion, and this is very helpful to understand, what your chief concerns are.
And I think also we have to look at the farmers when they unwind at the end of their lives, that they want to sell some lots. So it's difficult. It's kind of like the solar situation. It's not easy.
We have a system where if someone wants to do a lot division, sometimes it's within the staff's purview, sometimes it's has to go to planning board, and you've got a division like that. Maybe we can do something similar in terms of site plan, in which there's kind of a threshold. If it gets to a certain point, it gets bounced to the planning board, but otherwise staff can continue to do it on a site plan level. And so it gives them the ability to bounce a single family home site plan if it hits one or two criteria, and I'm not sure what those would be.
I mean, you
Try
could
to model
almost,
just try to model it after something we're already doing.
I mean, you could do it bedroom count or whatever to do it. I don't think it matters in terms of the, single family or not, but the idea that there's going to be a less conflict between people.
Okay, yeah, so if I'm hearing you with the overall, I think intent more than maybe any of the specific details that you want is residential development within this, agricultural zoning district. So ag, emphasis on ag, should be as much as possible to mitigate residential impact on agricultural uses.
Yep.
Both in health departments, in siting, really all of it is what I'm hearing, is to really elevate the ag use and find out ways we can work productively to, people are going to want to build single family homes. It's, something of an American birthright. So, we're very mindful of that and folks' property rights as well. So I think there's an interesting balance to be struck here. And I'm very happy to engage Scott Freiberger in some of these conversations and Liz Cameron's and the bunch. And I think it's good to do every once in a while too, just check in with those county folks, make sure we're all, on the same page. So thanks very much for that.
George might have some ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, he and I don't like I like Mr. Arendt. He doesn't like Mr. Arendt, but life is okay. And so, but there are ways to get through this that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And
Absolutely.
and also have property rights as well.
Yeah, totally. We're just trying to, I'm thinking through the staffing elements of it, the impacts to folks coming in, our staff, as particularly Heather, does bear the brunt of any even what most people, or maybe some people, would consider to be minor changes in the way that we perhaps dictate our operations. So I'm very mindful of those kinds of the potential for kind of anger directed at staff. So we want to make sure we're doing this in a well-coordinated fashion, of course, and can explain to people, rationale and why this is happening, and, urge their patience, kind of thing. So,
and it does speak, I think, to, if you will, agricultural subdivision cluster type situation, because you can deal with a lot of these items that, yes, I'm living in the country with 4 other houses, but I'm not impacting with a well, and I'm not, I don't know. I just might help people.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say also, we'll move on to that next after we, do this, the ag and RA zoning update. But next up, I'd really like to tackle major subdivision and make it in some ways kind of simple, which is the planning board will require a conservation subdivision approach, and that will be that. So.
You want to define your conservation? You're saying be aware of this is in the ag zone subdivision or major subdivision in general?
Yes, this would be everywhere in the town. Now, of course, folks could define their yields through a conventional plat, but really we'd want folks to draw in lot lines, and we'd want them to really think through the features on the sites, the variety of features. And, we've got a really great natural resources inventory the CAC worked on. We're compiling that data. It's going to be pretty easy to use, and we could help actually people walk through that too. And it sounds kind of fancy, but really it's just saying, these are the areas up front. We're going to, designate those as, open space or recreation. And then we're going to kind of put in the lots around them.
So we've gone from the UNAs being to be recognized to now build regulations around them.
Well, what we can do is ask for a conservation subdivision approach. And from there, we can essentially, with the planning board's assistance in an iterative process, come to, UNAs are just kind of one piece of it. It's not, it's more just like kind of getting real about these are some of the natural features on the site, and this is what the planning board thinks is most important. And we're in essence asking people to not necessarily just kind of impose lot lines somewhat randomly, but just have a little bit of thought and consideration in their approach, especially of a major subdivision. We're talking, we're due to see a 10 to 20 lot major subdivision. Be nice if it were well designed, well thought out, the roads and infrastructure that really worked well as both a perhaps vehicle and pedestrian and bike thoroughfare as well. Just really thinking through a good design, I guess I could say. So not right now. This is later.
But CJ, that would be on the planning board or the planning department?
Neither. That would be up to the applicant.
No, but I mean, as far as oversight of that there's adequate trails, adequate ingress, egress, whatever, it accents the natural features. Who would be overviewing that? Would that be the
Planning
you
board.
guys or the planning board? Or both?
It's all of us, really. So you mentioned ingress, egress. That can be part of the code, fire code. That can be part of highway department. That can be engineering comes together to comment on projects, of course, and with your help. And essentially, what we want to do is make sure the proposals that are coming in front of you are, high quality. We want to make sure they're. And I think conservation subdivision might be. It's kind of something of a misnomer in a way, but it's really just asking somebody who's thinking about developing a significant number of properties to consider the phasing and to consider, really the reality of it rather than just, here's a bunch of lines and I'm sure it's fine, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think
Done this in the past. They have a
You
pretty
can,
good
you
map
can
of
draw
what they-
attention to, just down the road from Dean that just came across to us. Dean, who was down the road there?
You mean
Jack-
the fish place?
No, Jack,
Jack Young.
Young, is it
Heck,
Young?
Oh, yeah,
Jack
the
Young.
Youngs, yeah.
Yeah, where he subdivided a few lots, then he came back and subdivided a few more, and then chances are he's gonna come back again and do some interior. That all should have been done at one time, I think, but anyways, whatever.
That's the
Yeah,
idea.
the interior is not going to be easy. So, he kind of did the easy stuff first and
Right.
said maybe in another, 20 years or something, but wants to get some cash out now.
But it does make a big difference in some lots with stormwater.
Oh, yeah.
As Dean was pointing out, that there's not only going to be a 60-foot right of way to get in and out, but let the pus out,
Yeah, currently some of that comes through my property.
Okay, CJ, anything else tonight you want to touch base on real quickly?
I think that's pretty much it. I just really wanted to have this kind of high level conversation about those intents. Please feel free to send me comments via email if you prefer that way as well, with additional language that you'd like to see. And I'll make sure these comments get to the code revision committee, half of whom are here already, which is great. So
Anything else from board members real quick on what we talked about tonight or in the future?
I thought it was a good discussion, and I think if you'd be kind enough to print for this technically challenged person, CJ, it would really be nice.
yeah, sure thing. Sorry about that for anybody who had any kind of printing problems. You just like a copy of what was circulated. We'll just get a print copy out to you.
The latest steps of the last year or so of your, meanderings and talking type thing. You mentioned things that I've overlooked, and
Okay, we'll get that print. Anyone else need printed copies of anything that was attached? Sandy, I think you said that you had fuzzy attachments.
If
It was fuzzy.
you try sending them to me again and let me look at them, and I don't know, maybe it was just a glitch in the system. I don't know.
Okay, Sandy. Anyone else's fuzzy attachments?
I like printed copies, if that's okay.
Printed. Oh, print. I see a lot of hands printing. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay.
There goes the budget.
No, Heather can certainly, she's happy to get those printed for you. I don't know how soon we can get them printed in the mail, but maybe by the end of this week. Does that sound reasonable?
sounds very reasonable, and I think they can be picked up. I don't think you need to put the postage on them, but
Yeah,
that's up to other people.
yeah, having them out front is just fine.
Oh, you guys don't mind swinging by to pick them up?
No.
Oh,
you don't
my-
need-
So to get food once in a while.
Okay, sounds good. All right, well then we can do that just like we do with the packets, and maybe we could just double up and get your packet out at the same time with this additional info. So, okay,
Mhm.
that sounds great.
No worry, no
Well,
hurry.
thank you all. Thank you all so
Right.
much. I so appreciate your insights and thoughts. It's marvelous. Really,
Thank you.
Really great to see you all.
Adjourn. We're gonna say goodnight. All in favor?
Bye.
I